This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 501 of the Yellow Wall Pods. I'm your Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Mats Hummels retiring from football. We will talk about Nico Schlotterbeck getting injured. We will talk about Borussia Dortmund losing 4-0 away to Barcelona in the first leg of the Champions League quarterfinal. And of course, we will also talk about the Bundesliga, quickly talk about the 4-1 win in Freiburg before we preview Saturday's game against Bayern Munich. For all that and more, joins me Matthias Zug. Hello, Matthias. How are you doing?
Hey, Stefan. I am doing okay, all things considered. How are you?
I'm fine myself. And last but not least, Lars Baumann, how are you doing?
I'm pleased that order is restored, Stefan, after last week. Me being mentioned second, I am doing okay.
All right. Well, Lars, since you are doing okay, I hope you're doing better after you had to digest the difficult news that Mats Hummels is going to retire from football. But no, honestly, yeah, he did announce that. So I thought we quickly talk about it since he has been an icon for Borussia Dortmund for a very long time. Did it hit you in the so-called feels?
No. I don't really understand why it would, because obviously he's left the club last season under somewhat, I guess you could say, acrimonious circumstances with this interview he gave before the Champions League final, which we don't need to rehash. I think he sort of burned some bridges unnecessarily. I think his retirement could have happened at Dortmund with a legacy left entirely intact. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to change too much, in let's say 15 years. Will we really remember that he spent this 1 year at Roma? Probably not. I think his legacy as, if not the best, one of the 5 or so best, let's say modern day Dortmund players, because I can't really judge on anything that happened, let's say, before 1990 or so. I think that place for Hummels is cemented. Obviously, one of the all-time great German defenders. Great legacy, not only at Dortmund, but also in the national team. But I guess it's also kind of time for him. His generation of players is coming to an end, I suppose. And obviously, this final season in Italy hasn't really panned out the way Hummels hoped for. I'm sure he likes the Dolce Vita in Italy, but in terms of, sporting success and all that, I'm not sure it turned out the way he hoped it would. And so I can understand why at his age, you want to hang up the boots. I don't exactly know what he's going to do next. I think could probably walk into a TV studio tomorrow and get a job on the spot, because he's obviously well-spoken, well-liked, good-looking, all that stuff. I'm not sure I expect him to take on a day-to-day role at a club anytime soon. Obviously, he could be an amazing manager because he understands football very well. He could be a sporting director because he's a clever boy, but I kind of feel like he's going to keep enjoying the life at least a little bit after retirement and maybe do some media stuff. And if he comes back to Dortmund, I wouldn't expect it to be in a capacity in which he holds any, real power anytime soon. But, 4 or 5 years down the line, if, the life as a retiree gets a bit boring, I think all doors in Dortmund are open for Hummels regardless of his exit last year.
Yeah, Matthias, where would you see Mats Hummels in any role or any capacity when the time is right, as Lars says?
Oh, I don't honestly know that there would be any capacity at the club level. I think, kind of echoing what Lars said, I personally believe his future, if he's going to have, a future in the sport itself, beyond what he's had, is in media, because he seems nearly perfect for it. He's very intelligent. He's very well spoken. He knows the game very well, and he's a good-looking guy. So he's incredibly marketable when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I think that suits him more, because he's not exactly somebody during his career who shied away from interviews or the camera or things like that, and making his opinion known, kind of like Jens Lehmann to a degree. Maybe not quite as controversial as Jens Lehmann, but kind of in that vein. So I would say he's less. I would be surprised if he takes any function at a management level at a club rather than media. I think that's probably his future more at something like during a Club World Cup or something like that, to be that pundit expert, and then kind of see where it goes from there.
I'm wondering if Dortmund should make him unretire to fill in for Schlotterbeck, who is unfortunately out for I think round about 6 months or so with a torn meniscus. He already had his surgery, but obviously the recovery will take some time. Since I'm not only a Dortmund fan but also a 76ers fan, I feel very meniscus cursed. Joel Embiid has been out more or less the entire season with a torn meniscus. Jared McCain too, but obviously no one apart from me cares. But nevertheless, it's a very massive blow for Dortmund, because he is not only going to miss the end of the season, but also the Club World Cup, and I assume probably large parts of the Hinrunde of next season. And I would go out on a limb and say that Schlotterbeck has been, at least in my book, been the best player of the season so far. And to lose him just after you unlocked his set piece capabilities on corner kicks is it's just so sad and so frustrating. And I wonder how Dortmund will cope with that. We saw them beat Freiburg 4-1. We saw them lose to Barcelona for nothing now in the 2 games in his absence, since he already missed Freiburg with the suspension. But I assume he would have missed that either way when his meniscus was already torn. But yeah,
happened in the Spielersatztraining on Sunday, which is even more annoying, because if he hadn't been suspended against Freiburg, he wouldn't have trained on Sunday, and who knows what would have happened, but he wouldn't have torn his meniscus on Sunday in a training session he wouldn't have taken part in.
That makes it really way more annoying. Lars, how are Dortmund going to compensate for that? Do you think that Emre Can is likely to receive a contract extension now?
I don't necessarily think those things are related, because Emre Can is under contract until 26. Given his wages, I don't think he's angling for a move next summer, or this summer, I should say. So you probably keep him around anyway, and if he keeps improving or performing, because he doesn't honestly have too much to improve upon over the last few weeks anyway, then you might revisit the discussion. I think the Schlotterbeck news is devastating on many levels, not least of which you probably were looking at making him captain this summer. I think that was something that was seriously going to be considered, because even if John doesn't leave in the summer, I think you would probably make a switch there, just to sort of signal to the outside, hey, we are turning a fresh page, and Nico Schlotterbeck, presumably under a new hefty contract, he's now our captain, our Identifikationsfigur, as we say in German, so the player who most fans look to when things are tough, and I think him missing, as you said, probably large parts of the first half of next season. I mean, they are saying round about 6 months, so it might be 5, which means he might play a few games in autumn. Might be 7, then you're probably looking at him only really coming back in 26. I think that changes quite a few things, and it's obviously, as you said, the most annoying part is not that he suddenly is your GOAT set piece taker, but obviously he's, I would say, without much debate, your Dortmund's best player this season and most consistent player, even in the dark Bundesliga days of this season. And losing a personality like that on the pitch as well, it's just not something Dortmund are, really set up to cope with too well. So if I don't really see how or who else Dortmund could have lost that would have been a more devastating blow to like the entirety of their plans for this season and next year than Schlotterbeck. So it's hard to overstate how big a deal this is.
Yeah, I think you're right. It really is very annoying that it happened. Matthias, I don't have to tell you that from annoying that it happened. It's a very easy segue to the game against Barcelona. I think we were all pretty much expecting a result like this. If we listen back to the last episode, Kovac did switch to a back four again with Riasson, Can, Anton, Bensebaini. I think it was a debut in midfield for Chukwuemeka and Matcher being side by side. And then, of course, it was Jamie Gittens, Brandt, and Adeyemi, if you will, in midfield, and Girassi up top. Obviously, I'd switched around a little bit. Sometimes a 4-5-1, sometimes a 4-2-3-1. But nevertheless, when we look at the lineup and the switches from the previous games, I was certainly scratching my head. Were you scratching yours?
Well, I mean, the thing that kind of surprised me was the formation change, given how successful you were against Freiburg and Mainz, and how arguably more solid you were centrally defensively, knowing you're going up against basically an all-out attacking pressing side. That honestly, it shocked me. I mean, Schlotterbeck wasn't there for Freiburg, so him not being there for Barcelona really has no impact there. So I was surprised you would shake up a winning team in this regard ahead of this match. I didn't get it. I mean, I know I saw some things saying, well, tactic and formation had nothing to do with the result, and that's, not true. Obviously, that will always have an impact on the result, individual performance aside. But yeah, that's the thing that really surprised me, is this change in formation after success against a team that's arguably better than what you were facing the previous 2 weeks. I just didn't get that. I felt like it was an unforced error. Like there was no need for that in this match.
Yeah, I mean, I would have definitely held on to the formation. I don't know who I would have replaced Pascal Groß with, because he was suspended. I don't know if I would have put Özcan in there or if I would have put Matcher in there. But either way, I definitely would have kept Svensson as a left back and Riasson as a right back.
I wouldn't have started Gittens. I wouldn't have started Gittens at all. I'd put Svensson at that left back position. Bensebaini, like he started against Freiburg, on that left center half, so to speak. And then no Gittens, because Gittens has, with Brandt, in my estimation, been one of the weakest, most surprisingly weakest players this season so far. So it's just, I agree with you. That's just an odd choice.
Well, also, we are from the Großkreuz-Schmelzer doubling up on Robin school of thought, if you will, and that sort of did not really happen against Lamine Yamal. I mean, he had so much freedom on the wings, and Dortmund did very little, and especially Jamie Gittens did very little to really help and support his fullback, and that to me, like in the first minutes or so, it was already evident that this is not going to really have any solidity to it, and I thought Dortmund probably should have made an early change. Also, I don't think Guirassy right now is having the match fitness to really help, and if you have Bayer and Adeyemi, who A, are both quick, and B, have a really good work rate to press up front, I would have not changed it up either. So there are many reasons why I would have stuck to the system that we have seen quite decently against Freiburg, knowing that Barcelona would have probably dissected that too. Kovac said at the news conference afterwards that he switched back to the 4-2-3-1 system or 4-5-1 system because he wanted to take pressure off in possession of the others, because he thought in the system that Dortmund applied against Freiburg that Dortmund simply would have not had any long stints of possession. I would argue with that a little bit, because I still think they would have managed that, but Barcelona did not press too aggressively for Dortmund to not find a way out of there, and especially with the added width, I think Dortmund would have also had spaces to navigate to. But yeah, Lars, I halfway read through your article that you wrote for Fußball.news, but unfortunately didn't have the time to finish reading it. But you also talked about 4 mistakes that Kovac made in these games. If you'd be so nice, can you recollect them?
I can try. My main takeaway is obviously my article was too long if you can't finish it. I think
no, it's just an issue of time.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with both of you that going away from the system that worked, especially defensively, kind of seemed unnecessary. I too would have put Svensson as left wing back to help out Benzebaini against Yamal, and Riasson as the right wing back to help out, in that case, Anton against Rafinha. Not sure exactly why they didn't do that, especially considering Niko Kovac after the game was complaining about the lack of defensive contributions from his wingers, which is kind of his fault, because Jamie Gittens doesn't do much work defensively. It's one of the main criticisms towards him. Adeyemi was doing better on the right wing the last few weeks, and then obviously had a good spell as a striker, or central attacker, or however you want to call it. I think Adeyemi was kind of taken out of the game by the referee. Obviously, it wasn't the main talking point after the game, and I'm not going to act like Dortmund could have taken on home a better result if it wasn't for Espinescas or whatever his name is. But that first half was a terrible refereeing performance, and the booking for Adeyemi was kind of the cherry on the top. Because, I mean, if Jules Koundé wants to have dreadlocks, that's fine, but he has to understand that at some points players will probably get a little tug of them. It's not like Adeyemi tried to scalp him or whatever, so that wasn't a booking. And then obviously Adeyemi had...
Well, first of all, he fouled Adeyemi before Adeyemi fouled him, so the ref should have called the foul first in the other direction, and that is obviously how the free kick that led to the first goal from Barcelona happened. So that's my grievance, and we haven't even talked about the clear foul on I think it was Chukwuemeka earlier on a clear breakaway. So who knows how this game would have developed if it weren't for the horrific refereeing calls in the first half that sort of did help set Dortmund up on their road to defeat.
Yeah, I'm still not going to make that argument, because the overwhelming superiority of Barcelona's second half. Just to finish the tactics debate, whether it's a really debate, I don't know. The midfield trio of Chukwuemeka, Mecha, and Brandt. I think Chukwuemeka played reasonably well. He was involved in a lot of attacks, especially in that good spell after going behind from Dortmund till the halftime break. Mecha didn't look match fit. I think that was kind of a throw of the dice, kind of a punt from Kovac because he likes what matchup brings to the table in theory, but he just wasn't ready for this kind of game, I would say. And then we don't have to relitigate the entire Julian Brandt saga from this season. It was another game between light and shadow, a few good moments, especially in the first half, but second half completely crumbled again. And the way he gave the ball away in unison with Waldemar Anton before, I think the fourth goal kind of summed up what Julian Brandt brings to the table right now, which isn't very much. And then the fourth mistake, obviously that's a bit hyperbolic, as always, I would say, is going away from the two forward system just to accommodate for Guirassy, because him being the main outlet meant he had to play with the back to the goal a lot. So they were targeting him with long balls. Who is he going to flick them on for in a game against Barcelona where you're sitting deep, and a lot of the times you're just pushing the ball forward to get some breathing space? I think the system with two forwards in the last few weeks or games has given them something new. The deep runs from both Bayer and Adeyemi. And when Guirassy was brought on against Freiburg, they kind of showed that Guirassy can also play with two strikers. He obviously did that at Stuttgart with Dennis Undav last season to great effect. So it's not like Guirassy can only play as the lone number 9 and doesn't allow for anyone next to him or around him. So even if you...
Arguably, he is better with a second strike partner, is in my book at least.
Possibly. I mean, if it's Dennis Undav, who's a number 10, who can also score and is not really a striker, then I don't know if it's the same at Dortmund, but still... I think it was understandable for Guirassy to come back in the starting 11 because obviously he's one of your most important players. He scored 10 Champions League goals this season, 2 of which came against Barcelona in the league phase. So I can understand all that, but I think they tinkered around a bit too much with the formation to accommodate for a couple of things. And maybe they were also a bit victims of their own success in air quotes, or relative success, because as I said, after going behind, Dortmund were really quite good. I mean, at the halftime, I would say that was a very much was a reasonable away performance to the best team in Europe at this point. Like, could Barcelona have really taken offense if Dortmund are level at halftime? Or let's say Guirassy takes both of his chances. I mean, there's a non-zero chance Dortmund are leading in halftime, so obviously that also changes a lot of things. And given that good spell, I think Kovac wasn't inclined to change tactics back to the system that worked over the last few games. And then obviously from the start of the second half was really when Barcelona kind of started their onslaught and were basically unstoppable, at least for this Dortmund team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think anyone here is claiming that Dortmund would have had a chance to win this game because Barcelona were just too good. But yeah, as I tweeted after the game, I'm still annoyed, however, that Dortmund managed to not score in this game because I don't think Barcelona's defense is so rigid that Dortmund couldn't have taken advantage of how Barcelona defend. And I think Dortmund have the potential to do so. They certainly were afforded the spaces. As you said, sort of in the second quarter of the game and also in the fourth quarter of the game, there were ample of opportunities for Dortmund to do something with the space that Barca gave them when they took sort of the pressure off. But as you also said, it could have been 3-0 after 7 minutes, essentially, because Barcelona had so many good chances already in the opening minutes of the game. And then sort of Dortmund finally found into the match. But yeah, it is an extremely deserved win for Barcelona. Matthias Emre Can said after the game that Dortmund were also too soft in those challenges and all that. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't think they were too soft. The referee set the tone really early that he wasn't going to do any favors to Dortmund. And so I think that naturally leads to hesitancy amongst players because you saw what was deemed a booking for Adeyemi, and then another foul against Adeyemi, and it's like, okay, this is going to go a certain direction, so I'm going to be more cautious. I don't think the physicality necessarily was the biggest issue. The biggest issue was that Dortmund just weren't as good as Barcelona. I mean, when you look at how specifically in that first half already, even though that was Dortmund's quote unquote better half, Bensebaini was just schooled by a 17-year-old kid over and over and over again. And so I just don't think physicality would have anything to do with it. Now, also at the same time, there was a situation where Bensebaini got out physicaled by that same 17-year-old kid and then decided to hold his face like he got smacked, which when you look it back, Nama was nowhere near his face, which I just always find that so embarrassing when football players do that kind of stuff. So I think physicality wasn't necessarily the issue. I think there was a certain level of hesitancy at times, and then Barcelona just overran them. I mean, they're a world-class team, and Dortmund are not. I mean, it's this very simple equation. It's just like Dortmund showed their superiority and quality over Freiburg on the weekend. And now Barcelona did that to Dortmund. Sometimes it's really that simple. They're just that much better.
Yeah, and Robert Lewandowski predictably had a very good game. Is it now 28 goals in 28 games against Dortmund? I think Dortmund are the team that he's scored the most goals against. So, yeah, obviously it's recency bias of the last decade, but it really annoys me to no ends to have to still endure all this from him, that he's still such a menace against the black and yellows. But yeah, I don't know. Should we move on to the Bundesliga, where Dortmund did make up a few positions with that win against Freiburg, but obviously they now have to play in Munich on Saturday. Bayern lost 2-1 against Inter at home, and have a couple of injuries themselves. Lars, what do you predict for this game? Do you think that Dortmund have a better chance to come away with a result than they did at the, I don't know, what is it called, the Olympic Stadium in Barcelona?
I think it is the Olympic Stadium Luis Companys or something like that. I'm too young to have witnessed the 92 Olympics, and if anything, I would probably have watched the US basketball team and not, athletics. But I don't think anyone who's got, a view on Dortmund is expecting anything whenever they are traveling to Munich. I think if Leverkusen had dropped points against Heidenheim last week in the Bundesliga, then maybe there would have been a chance for Bayern to kind of take their eyes off the ball a bit because of the timing between the two games against Inter. But given that it's still just 6 points to Leverkusen, so I would say that is just about within the margin where something could still happen in the run-in of the Bundesliga season. I kind of feel like, and also because Bayern obviously are now looking more likely than not to be eliminated, because obviously they would have to overturn a result against a very good team away from home in the Champions League. That just doesn't happen too often. I kind of feel like one of the main problems for Dortmund over the last few years, whenever they went to Bayern, is that Bayern always seemed to turn it on for Dortmund, even when, in other Bundesliga games, they might take their foot off the pedal at least a little bit because the overwhelming difference in quality. I think whenever Dortmund came to Munich, it at least felt to me like they were always on it, kind of trying to prove a point or whatever. And if that's the case on Saturday evening, given the history of Dortmund at Bayern over the last few years, the game in Barcelona being, a bit of a downer from a mental side. Obviously, Schlotterbeck missing is also huge for that kind of game, because remember when he was captain in the first meeting in November, he was outstanding. All those things coming together doesn't fill me with the most confidence. But then again, I think we probably said all the same stuff last season, and then they turned around and beat Bayern away from home for the first time in, I don't know, a decade or so. So I suppose never say never in football, but...
Well, the curse is broken, obviously, so...
yeah, or it's just starting anew. I mean, that's also a distinct possibility given where the two teams are. I think Bayern's injury problems are distinct, and I think especially in the second half of the season, they haven't been super impressive to me, outside of that one Champions League game against Leverkusen. But it's if Dortmund are looking at Bayern, I know whose problems they would rather have. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, Bayern are currently first in the Bundesliga. I think the gap is 30 points or something like that. Absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, Bayern do have several injuries. I think Neuer is injured, Upamecano is injured, Hiroki Ito is injured, Alphonso Davies, Pavlovic, Musiala, Coman are all out as far as I know. And these are obviously in many cases very important key players that are missing for them, but nevertheless they still have the depth to field a team that in quality is simply better than Borussia Dortmund are. So Borussia Dortmund need to find a way to, have a game plan that is good enough to make up for the gap in quality between those two sides, and hope that Bayern, for whatever reason, are a little bit more focused on the Champions League right now. But something tells me that won't be so. Matthias, when we talk about Dortmund's game plan and Niko Kovac going up against his former club, what would you like to see him do, and maybe what do you think he's going to do in terms of setup? Because obviously he will probably have to tweak a few things. I don't think that Chukwuemeka and Mecha are going to be fit enough to start in this game again already. I don't know, but... What do you expect in terms of lineup changes?
Well, I mean, ideally, you kind of revert in formation back to what was working versus what is not working, and play a little bit more of that counter-attacking game, which I think they can against Bayern. Obviously, you'd like to see Svensson back. Like you said, Chukwuemeka and Mecha, unlikely that both start, or at least I don't think Mecha would be ready to start. Maybe one of those starts and then the other one swaps in for the other one eventually. Pascal Gross, having him in there will make a huge difference, and then maybe you throw in Salihochan. I would like to not have to see Julian Brandt on the pitch, to be perfectly honest. I know we're starting to run a little bit thin on options. I'd also very much like to not see Gittens on the pitch. I think those two players are liabilities at this point. If you want to have and retain possession in any way, and hope for a full team press and defense, those two players will not be your allies. I would like to see Baya back on the pitch. I think Adeyemi has plenty in his tank that he can go. So, those are kind of the things that I think would have to happen to get some solidity back into it as far as what I would like to see.
I mean, as far as rotation goes, both Adeyemi and Bayo only played a half in Barcelona, so I think
Very
they
true.
at least should be ready to go. I don't know if I want to see Guirassy from the start. I would actually go back to the Adeyemi Bayer duo up front, and then maybe... I don't know if Chukwuemeka could start again for a third time in a row after, given his injury history. I think that would be very irresponsible. But I thought he played really well against Barcelona and, graded on the curve of where the entire team played. I would like to see him actually play for Brandt, and then maybe, I don't know, if a Gross Özcan double pivot makes sense, or if I'm out of my mind right now. I'm not entirely sure about the lineup, but sort of this is maybe what I would like to see. I don't know. Where are you on that, Lars?
I'm not sure I care, to be honest. Like, it seems as if all these lineup discussions we do sort of don't have a point most of the time, especially when it's the away game at Bayern. Like, I don't really see how whether Salih Özcan starts in defensive midfield or Felix Metscher, who I'm assuming is not going to be able to start the second game in 4 days. I'm not sure that makes a huge difference, and any brain power spent on it seems like sort of a waste, to be quite honest. But I think there's a few obvious ones, like Pascal Groß is going to be back in the starting 11. Chukwuemeka, I don't think can start 3 games in a week. Metscher already mentioned. And from a Bundesliga perspective, it's probably positive that Dortmund weren't able to keep it closer against Barcelona, because they don't really have to take the second leg against Barca into account too much. So outside of the players for whom it would just be too big a risk to play much or start again, I'm expecting basically the best possible 11 here, and then against Barca, obviously you want to say a reasonably prideful goodbye to the Champions League for presumably at least a year, or a bit more, obviously, because the season would start in September. But you catch my meaning. I think you probably don't take the Barcelona game into account in terms of squad planning too much for these 2 games.
All right, fair enough. Then there are maybe a few other discussions we can have. I think Patrick Berger was it talking about Jamie Gittins wanting to leave the club at the end of the season. Matthias, if I have surmised correctly from all the things you said, I don't think you would be too much against such a move.
Well, I'd like him to find some form again, to be perfectly honest, but this season has been such a dud. He's never been good defensively. So, sure. I mean, it would be, on the one hand, obviously it'd be a shame. On the other hand, it's okay, because he's not progressing, he's regressing. He's not even plateauing, he's regressing. And that's always concerning when you watch that in a young player. Why are they regressing? And it's beyond coaching, because there are other players that have progressed this season in their development, or at least not regressed, that are in a similar age profile as him. And honestly, when I watch him on the pitch, half of the time he just seems uninterested and bored. And so, and it seems like every defender has seen his trick now 100 times, and they're ready for it. So, yeah, if it's time to move on, it's time to move on.
What I find interesting is when you look at how Barcelona's players are running at full speed and Jamie Gittins is in the Giorena jogging tempo department, then yeah, I'm sometimes wondering why it is so hard to instill the same tenacity in players like him, who obviously should also be hungry for success and also should show a high work rate. But I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing it differently, but I thought that we could also see way more from Jamie Gittins in terms of how he contributes to a game like this on it's a Champions League quarterfinal, and for him to not really run his heart out, well, maybe it did, but it didn't look like it. At least to me, felt disappointing. But yeah, I don't know if I'm ready yet to sell him, but I think the stars are aligning for that to happen this summer. We'll see. But currently there really are a lot of rumors going around. I think Markus Krösche was sort of brought up again as a new CEO of Sport, and if I see the headlines today after the game, it appears as though once again no one is safe, be it Ricken, Kehl, etc., etc. Lars, you have a bit of a better overview of what the press is writing in Germany. Are there any things we should be apprised about?
I wouldn't take most of it seriously, to be honest, because I think the reaction to this Barcelona game is quite surprising to me. I looked it up. Barcelona scored 4 goals twice against Atletico this season. They scored 4 and 5 goals in the Clásico against Real Madrid. They beat Bayern Munich 4-1 in the Champions League phase. So it's, as we said last week and to start this week, it was entirely within the realm of possibility for Dortmund to just not be good enough to hang with Barcelona away from home, and that's what happened. So I'm not entirely sure what people were expecting from this game and why a obviously hefty defeat at Barcelona should change anything about your long-term plans. Like, to me, the game that should change things is when you lose to freaking FC Augsburg again, and not, just not being good enough to be part of the Champions League semifinals, which, Dortmund, even in a good year, can't expect to be, part of the top 4 in Europe. So all those reaction pieces that now it's time for big changes and whatever. If it wasn't before, it isn't now. Obviously, I agree that they need to make a few changes, starting with getting rid of or letting go, however you want to put it, Sebastian Kehl, sporting director. I think you also have to look at Lars Ricken, because his first year in charge, it's almost a year now, has been quite bad. He pushed for Nuri Sahin. He let him go too late. He only resolved the conflict that was brewing between Mislintat and Kehl for months. Then Sebastian Kehl got an absolutely ridiculous contract extension, even though at the time, I think I sang to a different tune, so it's not like I'm not holding my hand up in that regard. The choice of Niko Kovac, we've talked about at length, kind of uninspiring, and now giving him sort of carte blanche, like, that seems a bit early for that, because if Dortmund miss out on Europe by like 7 points at the end of the season, I think it's hard to understand why Dortmund would keep Niko Kovac, outside of maybe they don't think they can get anyone else, especially with the timetable of the Club World Cup and whatever. But I think, again, all these think pieces today are kind of hyperbole, taking the Barcelona game into overdrive, which I just don't understand. As I said, the Barcelona game should change your views the least in terms of the last few defeats. Again, Augsburg is a much more damning, comment on where Dortmund are this season, and maybe in general terms, than just not being good enough for the best team in the world right now.
Yeah, they lost 4-1 or 4-2 in Kiel,
4-2,
something like that, right? Yeah, that game alone should warrant a few heads to roll, since that also wasn't, as you said, a one-time slip up. I'm pretty much with everything you just said. Fully support the message, and I think we can discuss it further on another time. Matthias, do you have any other thoughts on the status quo of the Black and Yellows?
Well, don't keep the status quo. Obviously change needs to happen, and there needs to be, a deeper change in certain areas. Also in terms of recruiting profile when it comes to the mentality of players. I think that's something that needs to be addressed and looked at, because there have just been too many that have failed in that department, all other quality aside. And I think that's something, it's just work rate. Honestly, work rate is one of the biggest problems that Dortmund seem to have, because they can have a great half, and then the second half they fall apart because the work rate's not there. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed in your recruiting moving forward.
Yeah, I honestly think that Dortmund will probably lose in Munich because of the lack of fitness. I talked about it on the last episode, but I think that they just don't have what it takes to hang with what I assume is still a very physical team. Bayern Munich usually are, and I just don't think Dortmund will be able to do that over 90 minutes, and hence there will be too many lapses, mistakes, whatever. I mean, we have not really talked in depth about the goals Dortmund conceded against Barcelona. I mean, the first one obviously was a set piece goal, but the Brandt Anton giveaway for the 4-0 in the end is also one of those lapses where you're just too tired to focus, and those mental errors then happen. And that to me is another indicator. Maybe the reason Brandt is having such a poor season is because he is severely unfit. That could be it, because when we talk about work rate and the way he plays, I'm not really feeling it either. And yeah, Dortmund currently are, I think, 5 points away from the 4th place in the league. And maybe if they beat Bayern, we can talk about a comeback potentially of making a run for the Champions League spots. But right now, I'll be honest, even if it's mathematically still possible, it just feels too far away. And this was only the win in Freiburg the second time they won 2 games on the bounce in the Bundesliga. So we have to really keep it real, as they say. Dortmund are currently in 8th place, and I honestly think that, this is more or less where they belong this season. I don't know if they maybe leapfrog Freiburg or whatnot, but they have not really. I mean, if at the end of the day, if you're in 4th place, you deserve it because it's a long league season and that is on merit. But nevertheless, I just don't feel like this team ought to have a Champions League run in the end. But no, I'll be happy if it happens one way or another. Let's just put it this way. Anyway, everyone out there, thank you again for listening, and we will be back with another episode after. I think we can do it after the Bayern game if it goes well. If not, then we'll just do the Bayern and Barca game in one wash, and then we'll see where we go from here. Anyway, have a great week. Until next time, goodbye.